Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. Its far north gate and southern trails came Walker, Boone, and Kenton too. Kentucky, she is calling, a place of history. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. I'm John Stephenson. June Guyman and I are glad to be back off our trip across Kentucky. We traveled some 42,000 miles gathering the history of Kentucky county by county and its tourism attractions. We hope you will appreciate the films of the history of Kentucky by your congressional districts as much as we appreciated the opportunity of traveling through Kentucky some 42,000 miles. Thank you. Now enjoy the history of Kentucky. At this time, let me introduce to you, to give you an overview of Kentucky history, Dr. Thomas Clark.
Dr. Clark, we want to thank you for being with us.
I'm happy to be with you.
What can you tell us? We have been to every county in Kentucky. We've collected the information about the history of each county. We've come to you, Mr. History, to help us close our documentation on Kentucky by telling us a little bit how Kentucky itself got formed.
Well, Kentucky had a bit of a nebulous beginning. This was a wide open, unexplored wilderness territory on this side of the mountains. You begin to see an opening of the door as early as the middle decades of the 18th century. By 1760, Kentucky was gradually coming into focus, and by 1770, it was pretty well explored by the long hunters that came in, and then of course that famous party, they were long hunters too, of Daniel Boone and John Finley, who came into this state. Now, contrary, I think, to popular belief, this was not a region unmarked by no trails or no landmarks. There were buffalo traces, Indian traces across the state. As you know, no major Indian tribe occupied this state. This was a borderland between the northern Indians, the Shawnees with all their associated tribes, and the southern Chickasaw, our group to the south. And there was a great deal of rivalry between them to claim this hunting ground. Now, Kentucky, you know, geographically is of a highly varied nature, highly sectionalized nature. This central cane land here, or what you know as the Bluegrass Plateau, was a very famous grazing ground. There were salt licks scattered around all over the state where animals congregated, and the skin trade, the Indian trade, was a fairly rich one that originated here. In the early records, you have stories of the long hunters pursuing both the fur trade and the skin trade, but the major emphasis was upon the skin trade itself. Then, of course, in the middle of the 18th century, the rivalry between the French and the British, and you began to having those land speculators or surveyors like Thomas Walker, Christopher Gist coming into the region, making those preliminary so-called surveys in quotation marks. From 1760 on, the British were in control of this territory. The British undertook to check population expansion in this direction in the proclamation of 1763, which they were unsuccessful in doing. After 1770, you had a population movement into this region with the establishment in 1774 and 75 of Harrodsburg, or Harrodstown, and Boonesboro, Logan's Fort, and then Bryan Station, Lexington Fort. We're standing right now almost on the ground where the Lexington Fort was located. From that time on, there was a great population movement into this region that you know as Kentucky, concentrated largely in this central bluegrass area, but population in time was to expand into other areas of the state.
What were the first counties in Kentucky?
Well, Kentucky County was the first one in 1776. that was simply a blanket. Well, I believe back of that there was Fincastle County, but Kentucky County was simply a blanket spread of Virginia authority into this western country. Then in 1780 they were created the first three counties, Lafayette, Fayette, Lincoln, and Jefferson counties. Fayette County covered all the area north of the Kentucky River. Lincoln County, the area east of Benson's Creek, and Jefferson County south of the Kentucky River and west and south of Benson's Creek. Benson Creek's mouth is just opposite, about where that office plaza is in Frankfort at the present time.
Okay. During the interview, we're standing on West Main Street, which is right across from the old Fayette County Courthouse. What is the significance of this area, Dr. Clark?
We're standing in a very historic spot here. Right here to my right, where this Radisson Hotel is located, is the site of the old Fort Lexington. It was built here on this town creek with trim cane all around it. They cleared the cane all around it, build a fort, and give them visibility, not to be surprised by a sneak Indian attack. Right to my right, on the corner of Main and Mill Street, is where the office of the True American stood. That was an anti-slavery paper published by Cassius M. Clay here in the very heart of Kentucky slavery, which that office was raided illegally so, in violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. It was packed up. Later on, the courts granted Cassius M. Clay restitution, and he collected damages for it. To my back is Cheapside. Cheapside has a long and romantic history. Here within 50 feet of where we are standing was the scene of the slave auctions, where slaves were sold out of this bluegrass region to the expanding cotton belt in the south. It's also the scene of the great court day markets in which the livestock trade was carried on. This place used to be crowded with horses, cows, sheep, every kind of dogs, everything that people had to trade come in on court day and gather around this spot. Two, it was a great political stumping ground for politicians. I could not tell you the speakers who have lifted their voice in seeking office in this square to our back. The building immediately behind us is the fifth courthouse to stand on this spot. The first one was constructed in 1788. They were either burned or torn down because they were antiquated. The fourth courthouse contained the wonderful piece of Kentucky artistry, Woman Triumphant, by the famous artist, just a moment, I'll think of it, Joel Chandler Hart. The courthouse burned down and destroyed that wonderful piece of statuary. I had an forearm of that graceful figure, which I gave to the University of Kentucky. So far as I know, that's the only existing relic of that. Here were conducted trials, lawyers, a string of Kentucky famous lawyers, John Breckinridge, Caleb Wallace, George Nicholas, on down Henry Clay, on down through lawyers of the most famous of the Kentucky bars practiced in this courthouse across the street. That is one of its predecessors. Here it was, right after World War II, that the Army was called out, not the militia. The regular Army was called out to quell a lynch mob in the famous Leavitt trial, in which this square was seething with people with ropes and tar, threatening to lynch that Negro boy. The Army veterans brought from the battlefield of France stood off the mob, and the trial proceeded in an orderly way. It is also a square statuary of John Hunt Morgan's equestrian statue is over to our left. John Breckinridge's statue is here to our on Sheepside. This was the center of the business area of Lexington. Not only Lexington, but it was a kind of a commercial nerve center for all of eastern Kentucky and all of central Kentucky. Louisville, after 1820, became the major commercial city of the state.
Choosing a selection of the capital of the state, how was that done?
That's a pretty complicated issue. Of course, you would have thought they would have chosen one of the major towns in the state, like Lexington or Louisville, or Danville, for instance, or Harrodsburg, but they didn't. They went to Frankfort for various reasons, and I'm not sure that I'm entirely right about all of them, but one of the reasons, it was located near the center of Kentucky population at the time. It also was located on the river, easy access by water. The people of Frankfort supplied some materials and support for the building of a capital, and like all things, everlastingly, including the observation of the Ten Commandments in Kentucky, there's some kind of political implication involved.
Okay. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, besides the immense amounts of knowledge that you possess? How did you get interested in history?
I came to Kentucky in 1928 without knowing a single soul in this state. I got off the train down here on September the 14th, 1928, with 25,000 Kentucky Republicans milling around. I had never seen a Republican who wasn't a postmaster until I rode in the seat from Ashland down here with Charlie Curtis, who was running for vice president on the Hoover ticket. I came here as a student at the University of Kentucky. I was a graduate of the University of Mississippi, and I started work on my master's thesis in the field of Kentucky history, writing on the subject of trade in slaves, livestock, and hemp between this area and the lower South. And I became very much interested in the history of the state from that. And there's scarcely a day gone by in the last 60 years that somewhere or other I haven't been involved in doing something about the history of the state.
We also understand that you've written 20-plus books. Can you tell us what some of the books are about?
Well, I've published a history of Kentucky, the Exploring Kentucky, which was used a long time in the schools. I published the Kentucky in the Rivers of America series, the Rampaging Frontier, Frontier America, the Emerging South, Pills, Petticoats, and Plows, Southern Country Editor, and I've just published The Greening of the South, which has to do with reforestation and conservation of the southern land.
We were talking earlier about the changes that have been made. And when we've interviewed other people, we've asked them what changes they've seen take place. Can you tell us a little bit about the changes you've observed since you've been in Kentucky?
In the state or in the county?
In the state.
Oh, yes. Phenomenal changes. Despite all of the discussion of the educational system and the low standing in many categories of educational effort, I've seen phenomenal changes in educational endeavor. I think I've seen, although I'm no longer in the classroom, I think a much better prepared student is coming to college and universities now than in the old days. I've seen the family farm virtually on the way to disappearance. Who would have thought in 1928 that the great tobacco industry in this state would be threatened as it has been? You would be very remiss not to observe that Kentucky has made phenomenal progress in breaking the barrier of isolation, in building its highway system, and going into every part of the state. In the Clements administration, that legislation from building farm to market roads, building the interstate highway system, and then of course supplemented by the toll road system in the state, has made marked changes in Kentucky. I've also seen Kentucky fail to meet its challenges, fail to come up with what it's possible for it to do. Kentucky is still a provincial agrarian state trying desperately to just kind of ease into the 21st century, very poorly prepared to do so.
What do you think about what John's doing?
I think it's very interesting indeed. To go into all 120 counties in this state is a monumental undertaking. And he's gathered up a contemporary vignette look at the state that 50 years from now, people will turn back to these tapes and see that old historian in Lexington and all these people around the courthouses in 119 other counties and say, good God, is that where we were at that time? No, I think it's creating a very nice, interesting, and useful historical document.
I just wanted to come over here for a second to heap a little praise. It's not necessary, but I'm going to do it for this gentleman, Dr. Thomas Clark, because not only did he teach there at the University of Kentucky when I went there to UK, and I had Dr. Charles Talbert for Kentucky history, but I used your book when I taught American history in high school and Kentucky history in high school. And it was a great deal of honor that I did so. You know, I look back over my history myself, and I had people like Mrs. Hinsdale for a history teacher in the 8th grade, and you remember those people that make a mark on your life. And Dr. Clark, you've made a mark on many people's lives here in Kentucky and across the United States and world, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You spoke of a very fine historian in Charlie Talbot. Charlie was very precise and exacting. His book on Benjamin Logan is an excellent book. He also had a very fine volume on the history of the later years of the University of Kentucky. He was an excellent teacher, as the people in northern Kentucky will tell you.
Absolutely. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. It's nice being here with you, and good luck, John.
Thank you so much.
And good luck,
Thank you.
lady manager.
I'm John Stephenson. June Guyman and I, along with Kentucky's historians, are proud to give you the Kentucky history of the 2nd Congressional District. Scottsville, the county seat of Allen County. Allen County has a population of 14,623. Area square miles is 338 and ranks 53rd. Allen County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
My name's Roger Pitchford. I'm the Property Valuation Administrator.
Okay.
I'm Bill Foster. I'm the Sheriff of Allen County.
All right, thank you. Could you give us a little information, because we're getting the information together on courthouses? We realize that this is not the first courthouse, and could you give us some historical background on the ones that existed before this?
Well, the first courthouse in Allen County that I know anything about was built in 1819, and that courthouse served the people of the county until 1903, when the second courthouse was built. In the center of the square was a location for both those courthouses. And then in 1966 or 7, the new courthouse was built a block off the square. The old courthouse was then torn down, and they're using that area that was occupied by the old courthouse as part of the streets and part of the parking area. This courthouse, even though it's 20 years old, is still new to a lot of the people in the community, but much better place, much more room for record storage and for the other things that a courthouse is needed for in the area. But those 3 courthouses, the ones that I'm familiar with, are about those dates as far as their time of building and construction.
Okay. We also wanted to get some information on to help promote each county on tourism. If someone were going to come through Allen County, what would you suggest they stop and see?
Well, here we've had our lake out here is, I guess, our main attraction out here. We've got the lodge, which is over in Barron County, just across the line. That, I guess, that's mainly our tourist attraction here. During the summer months, we have a lot of people in here around here that come to the lake, camp out, and go to the lodge over there.
Well, Well, agriculture is still our major industry, even though we have a General Electric plant. We have a division of Cooper Industries known locally as Scotchcraft. It's part of the Kirsch Company. And then we have several other companies, not the least of which happens to be that Scottsville is the headquarters nationally for Dollar General Corporation. But still, even with those and Lebanon Jeans and a new garment manufacturing plant coming in and two small plants out in the county, logging, agriculture, and these items that we've mentioned are the major things that are happening in Allen County. Of course, we're close to Bowling Green, and we have several people who work in the Bowling Green area.
Glasgow, the county seat of Barron County. Barron County's population is 34,249. Area square miles, 482, which ranks 14th. Barron County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
Across the street behind us we have the Barron County Courthouse, and to my left we have a local historian as well as a judge executive. I'm going to ask both of them to introduce themselves.
I am Cecil Good, live here in Glasgow.
My name is Woody Gardner, and I'm the Barron County Judge Executive.
Thank you. We had some questions about the county formation as well as this information on the courthouse here and perhaps the ones that existed before this courthouse. When was the County of Barron formed?
It was formed in 1799. It was authorized in 1798, toward the end of 1798, but it wasn't actually organized until 1799. This is our 6th courthouse. It was built in 1964. So far as I know, none of them burned except possibly the first one or two which were logged. And they might have burned because they did not stand very long.
Over at Park City there was Bell's Tavern, and that was on one of the major stage lines, and all of the famous political figures of the day who traveled the stage lines went through there, and many stopped and stayed overnight, like Henry Clay, Andrew Jackson, Jenny Lind, when she was making her tour of America, sang there at Bell's Tavern. Now, as far as those figures who are from this county, which was kind of the second part of your question, I think. 2 governors of the state of Kentucky or the Commonwealth of Kentucky are from Barron County, and one of the commanders of the Strategic Air Command, who is still living, General Doherty, is from Barron County, former president of the National Broadcasting Corporation. Julian Goodman is from Barron County. Billy Vaughn, a famous musician, is from Barron County. Mr. Good
It's from Barron.
is from Barron County.
I might add that the original trace between northern Kentucky, where a lot of our early settlers landed on the Ohio River, went through this county and joined up with the Natchez Trace at Nashville and went on down to New Orleans. That later became a public road, and as Judge Gardner said, most of the prominent people on their way east to Washington, for example, would go through here, like Henry Clay, Andrew Jackson. Another thing that, another attraction here that caused a lot of people to come to this part of the country was Mammoth Cave. Now, Mammoth Cave was a very interesting point to many people throughout the world very early. They started coming here in the early 1800s. In fact, it seemed to be more popular to people from afar, including Europe, than it was to our own people right here, which is often the case, I guess. Mm-hmm. Arthur Kroc, the well-known journalist, was born here, and there's a plaque out Main Street here in front of the house where he lived as a child. I knew him in Washington, and often we'd engage in conversation about Glasgow, and there seemed to be a warm spot in his heart for Glasgow.
Well, the major industry would be our manufacturing, which has somewhere approximately around 4,000 jobs in that. The other part of our economy consists of our strong agricultural base, which is production of burley tobacco, dairy and beef cattle, alfalfa production, and then the other major factor of our economy is the tourism business. Our county is adjacent to both Mammoth Cave National Park and Barren River State Park, and those three major things, along with our commercial enterprises, small business and things, make up the basis of our present-day economy.
There was one year, I think it was 1898, when there were 3 hangings here, one of them right on the square. 2 were legal hangings and one was a lynching. The lynching involved a young black who was accused or suspected of attempted rape, and he was meted out illegal justice without proving that it was that he actually had done it, and afterward there was some indication that there was question that he had. The other 2 hangings were legal, and they involved family squabbles. In one case, mother-in-law was shot, and another one, father-in-law was shot, and they were both hanged in the local jail yard, which is a couple of blocks away from here. Those were the last hangings here, and in fact, I understand executions were moved to the state level from here not too many years after that.
I understand that both of you have written a book. Could you tell us what the name of the book is and what the content is?
Together, and let's let Judge Gardner tell about that.
In about 1980, Mr. Good and I had an idea, and we put together a book called The Barren County Heritage, which is a pictorial history of Barren County. We were the co-editors of it. There were many, many local authors who contributed chapters or photographs or items of historical interest that were included in the book. As I said, it came out in 1980. Some 2 or 3 years later, a second printing of the book was made, and it's a rather comprehensive history of Barren County, something over 300 pages in hardback presentation. Mr. Good now has written 2 additional books on his own, one about Barren County and then another of the history of Mammoth Cave, and I think it'd be nice to let him tell you about those.
Both of them were published, released a few months ago during 1986. One we called Heart of the Barrens, and it's a collection of essays on historical subjects. The one on hanging that I mentioned a moment ago is in there. They were first published in the Glasgow Daily Times, so I edited them and put them together in this book. The other one on Mammoth Cave was done at the request of the Mammoth Cave National Park Association to chronicle how Mammoth Cave National Park came about. So that's now being distributed over at the park.
Gail Wood, Barren County Sheriff.
Bobby Wilson, Circuit Court Clerk.
Roy Jackson, Deputy Jailer.
Okay.
We have Barren River State Park, which is one of the better parks we feel like across the state. Also, Mammoth Cave is just a very few miles from Barren County, and tourism is a very important part of our economy here, and we welcome everyone to visit our park and Mammoth Cave and just to be in our area.
Hardinsburg, the county seat of Breckinridge County. Breckinridge County's population is 16,911. The area square miles is 565, ranking 6th. Breckinridge County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
Judge Executive.
And I'm Kenneth Barger, and I'm the Property Valuation Administrator for Breckinridge County.
I'm Virginia Hinton, and I'm the County Archivist. This is the Holt House, and it's located over in Holt, Kentucky, and it's the home place of the Joseph Holt family. He was the Advocate General, and he presided at the trial of the Lincoln conspirators and a Mrs. Surratt. And he died in Washington, but he's buried over on the Homestead place, and he has this cemetery over there devoted to the Holt family. And it's a very famous attraction for Breckinridge County.
Well, the first one is the courthouse that burned in approximately 1958. It was on fire at the time the picture was made, and it was a courthouse before the one we have now. And then the other picture, this one, is of the jail, which was tore down and replaced with a new jail when about 1976. And then the next picture I have is a picture of the old Irvington High School, and then this is on my left is the old Breckinridge County High School, and they were merged into a new Central High School in 1965. Well, the picture I'm holding is of the old Breckinridge County Courthouse, which burned in 1958, and it's on fire in the picture. It's been since replaced with a new courthouse, which you see in the background. The offices were held in various buildings in the county that were available until we moved into this new courthouse in the latter part of 1960.
We're standing in Hardinsburg, Kentucky, which is the county seat of Breckinridge County. Hardinsburg was established in the mid-1700s by William Hardin, who was a friend and cohort of Daniel Boone's, and he moved down west of Boonesboro and made the settlement here on the creek, and it was named Hardin's Ford originally. Breckinridge County is named after John C. Breckinridge, and the county itself was named and established in 1799, officially incorporated, I believe, in 1800. Virginia, would you have something to add to that?
We have William Hardin's will over in the archives on display for anybody to come in and look at. Also, we'll give them a copy of it if they're interested. We're very fortunate to have this will, as it was saved through the fires that we had at the courthouse.
Might add that we've had 2 courthouses burned down in Breckinridge County in the history of the county, so the one we saw pictured a while ago was just the second one.
I might add that Breckinridge is 5th largest county in the state, that it is on, of course, the Ohio River. There's 3 main towns, Hardinsburg, Cloveport, and Irvington. Cloveport is probably the oldest of the 3, and at one time coal oil was pressed out of coal or some way extracted from coal and sent as far away as England. There was an old railroad called the Old Victorian Railroad, which was used to bring the cannel coal into Cloverport to be processed.
Among the attractions in Breckinridge County, the northern border is the Ohio River, and of course that's always a big attraction to boaters and fishermen. The southern border is Rough River State Park, which is a resort park and visited by thousands of people every year. The Holt Mansion is quite a tourist attraction. Virginia, can you think of anything else that might be?
Well, I can think of our archives, that we have people come in here from all over the United States looking up their ancestry, so I believe that's one of our big attractions for Breckinridge County.
The archives is a pilot project that was funded through the state archives, and several other counties now have an archives saving their historical records, and Breckinridge County was a pilot project in that area. You have anything, Ken?
Well, except that it's primary agriculture county. It has a lot of greenery. It's just a beautiful county for people that's not that's lived in cities and haven't been in the country life.
Born and raised in Breckinridge County. I was born here at the old Breckinridge County Hospital. and lived all my life at Glendean, Kentucky, which is a southwestern corner of the county. My heritage includes the Dean family and the Mormon family, and both old names and still common names in the county. William Hardin, the founder of the county, was a fifth great-grandfather on my mother's side. I went to the University of Kentucky and came back to Breckinridge County and taught school for a while and operated a feed mill, and then in 1985 decided I'd like to run for county judge executive, and was lucky enough to get elected, and this is my first term. I've enjoyed the job, and I love Breckinridge County, and I intend to stay here all my life.
Well, I was one of 12 children of Pete and Rachel Flood, and I'm very proud of my Irish ancestry. I'm pure Irish. I love it. And I married John F. Hinton from McQuady. I moved down there and raised a family of 11 children. And as of now, I've been the archivist since April 1st as a full-time, and assistant archivist since '85 in October. So I love my work, and I hope to continue in it, and I hope the county will see fit to fund it another year. Had to get that in.
I, too, am a lifelong resident of Breckinridge County, being born between Hardinsburg and Cloverport. I attended schools in Breckinridge County, attended Western Kentucky University, came back, taught school 1 year, and then I worked at Olin Chemical Plant in Meade County for 10 years, and I have since been property valuation administrator for about 18 years. My family originally came to Kentucky, Breckinridge County probably in the last part of the 1700s and settled near Union Star, Kentucky. And I enjoy my work and I enjoy living in Breckinridge County. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Famous people to be born in Breckinridge County was born at Cloverport. He was a son of a minister. I think that the way his family came there was there was a resort near Cloverport called Tar Springs, and it was supposedly had a medicinal effect to bathe in the tar water. And later his father pastored at Cloverport, and while he was there, Wally Rutledge was born. And after being in education and other fields, and eventually a judge, was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Roosevelt, and he served approximately 8 years on the Supreme Court. The house that he was born in still stands at Cloverport.
Shepherdsville, the county seat of Bullitt County. Bullitt County population 45,730, area square miles 300, rank 66. Bullitt County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
I'm Gene Osselmeyer. I practice law in Bullitt County.
I'm Jean Hetzel, and I'm the Circuit Clerk of Bullitt County.
Okay, thank you. We wanted to get some information on the formation of the county as well as history related to this courthouse and perhaps ones prior to this courthouse.
Well, the original courthouse was constructed about a half-mile south, or not a half-mile south, perhaps not that far, but south of here at the intersection of 2nd and Buckman Street. And this courthouse here is right now approximately 90 years old. The county was formed in 1796. It was part of Jefferson and part of Nelson counties, named Bullitt County after a legislator from this area. Some of the early history of the county includes one man, for example, that won the Congressional Medal of Honor in the Civil War, and he was a resident of Lebanon Junction, enlisted in the 10th United States Infantry in Lebanon Junction, served in that unit for about 4 years, was awarded the Congressional Medal. The unit was mustered out with only 6 survivors, and he finished the war part of another unit. Another point of early history in Bullitt County is the fact that we had a university here that started in about 1870. The name of it was Eckstein Norton University, and it had a rather fine board of directors. It included the president of the L&N Railroad, whose last name was Eckstein, and also Joseph P. Belmont, after which the Belmont Stakes are named. And there were other people that were members of that board of directors that formed that university. It was located in the southerly portion of the county, in the area more toward Nelson County and Bardstown, right about 1 mile from the L&N rail spur. That university began in 1870, and for some reason not completely known to the records or to the people locally, it sort of disappeared from the scene in 1907. However, until about 10 or 15 years ago, the buildings, the foundations of some of the buildings, and one complete building was still in existence. The university had about 2,000 students at one time. The lady standing here to my left, Jean Hatzel, her homestead, or the Barger homestead, is located about a half mile from where this university originally was located. That's some of the early history that we have here in Bullitt County. It is a county that we perhaps have not explored sufficiently enough insofar as history is concerned, because the Lincoln Trail, or that road that Lincoln and his family took in their migration north into Indiana and eventually Illinois, is the road that we're standing on right now. This is part of the Lincoln Trail that winds through the county. There are a lot of things that haven't been exploited insofar as history is concerned, but we hope that with our present organization we would be able to explore it a little more. So very many famous people came through here on their way moving west, eventually ended up in the states of California, Washington, Colorado, and they were relatively famous people. So we hope that we're going to be able to gather a little bit more information about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
the question we have about tourism. If someone were going to come through Bullitt County, what would you suggest that they see?
Well, I think the number one thing that is now an attraction in Bullitt County is Bernheim Forest, which is a beautiful spot. It is strictly nature. In fact, they're building a new Boy Scout camp that will be open when this year. I believe it was this year.
Sometime this year.
And also, I'd like to add with Gene's comment about Bullitt County, a lot of people aren't aware that Kentucky was part of Virginia at one time. We have some famous salt wells that are down here in what they call
Salt Lake.
Salt Lick, yeah. Bullitt Lick. And at one time, that place was the first industry in Bullitt County, and employed approximately 3,000 people. The Salt River, of course, is located here, and that was where the major part of the salt came from in preparation of food and various other things that they had. Also, we have a little old bank building down here that I one time owned. Purported to be the first bank west of the Allegheny Mountains. And we bought that, my husband and I purchased that, and we completely renovated it. And the old vault's still there, and we sold it in 1983. We sold the little building in 1983 to Burl and Pike, whom I might add I've talked with you about. And so there's a lot of things in Bullitt County that exist. We had a place called Paracat Springs, which was well known in the 1700s, early 1800s, that people came from all over the country to drink the mineral waters, and the old buildings are now gone. In fact, I-65 cut that place in two. There's a love story there concerning Paracat Springs called The Lone Grave. Young lady and her fiance, they met there, fell in love, and were to be married. He left to go to the Mexican War, and he did not return. He was apparently killed there, and she was buried. Is buried there on this particular piece of property I'm telling you about. The little iron fence is still there. Hopefully that will never be destroyed. There's some property that's in my mother's estate lies adjacent to that, and once in a while I'll walk over there just to look at it, because it is quite a romantic story. You'd have to read it. So we have a lot of history in Bullitt County. As G says, hopefully one day we'll get it down to where it will be known throughout the United States.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was just thinking about General Henry Christ, who was one of the early settlers and came here because of the salt wells. That was so important to those people that were using the Lincoln Trail, moving north and northwest. They stopped here to resupply their salt supply because it was so very important in their diet as they were traveling west. And one of those individuals was General Henry Christ, who was an early Indian fighter. He stayed here. He really developed land here and was a farmer or owned farms. And he was interred here at his death on a farm that is presently used for agricultural purposes. He built a very fine house there. His descendants still live here, several of them. The Historical Society of Frankfort, Kentucky, now the Kentucky Historical Society, came to the present owner and asked if they couldn't remove the body of this very famous personage and then take it to Frankfort. And he said that, or so the story goes, at least as local folklore, he said it wasn't quite right for them to remove the body of someone after they'd been buried and properly in a grave and so forth. And they said, well, do you think that if we paid you $500 for this purpose, would it make it a little bit better? And he allowed it how it might. So they took the body out and they took it to Frankfort. And by the way, there is quite a monument to the gentleman there in Frankfort. But then they took the $500 and put it in a shoebox, placed it in the basement on the sill, and it was the old money. This is prior to 1933, the bank holiday. And the money stayed there in that box, but then during the Roosevelt administration, FDR, when we had the bank holiday and all the old money was recalled, it was larger money, larger size, the paper money, the family decided that they'd better go down and get that $500 in the shoebox. And as they opened it and looked at it, they discovered that the mice had chewed it up. That old money was not treated for varmints and mice and things like that as our present currency is. So that's another interesting story from Bullitt County. The liquor industry that is led by Jim Beam Distilleries. Number 2 would probably be the Bullitt County Board of Education. We have a very interesting statistic in that more than 25% of the people in Bullitt County are either a student or an employee of the Bullitt County Board of Education. And then I think probably in the third spot, that is in employment, would be Publishers Printing, which is a local firm, locally owned. It is a growing firm. They do a great job in keeping local people employed, and they are locally minded, and we're proud to have them here. But I think that probably covers the three, don't you think?
Of course, A.J. Bear is here. I'm not sure what their employment might be, but they are an industry located here on 44E. I might add, Publishers has purchased additional property,
That's right,
300 acres?
Right, in Lebanon Junction.
In Lebanon Junction, and they're proposing to put a building over there, either a warehouse or another plant of some nature over there in the near future. So, looks like the county's growing,
Oh yeah, growing quite a bit.
All right, thank you.
Owensboro, the county seat of Daviess County. Daviess County population, 87,783. Area square miles, 463, rank 18th. Daviess County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
We're standing in front of the Daviess County Courthouse, which is located in Owensboro, Kentucky. With me we have Sheila Heflin, who is a supervisor at the Kentucky Room, which is part of the Owensboro-Daviess County Library System. Sheila, we had a few questions we wanted to ask you because we're providing this information, hopefully, to high school students on the history of each county. What can you tell us about not just this courthouse, but other courthouses that may have been here prior to this one?
This is the 5th Daviess County Courthouse. The first one was built soon after the county was created in 1815, and this one burned, and in 1820 they built the second one. and they needed a larger courthouse. So our third courthouse was constructed in 1858 or 9, and this was much larger. It was 2-story, had a basement, and that courthouse served the county for several years until it was burnt January the 4th, 1865 by a band of Confederate guerrillas who came down from Hancock County. Now, they were nice enough to let us get all of our county records out before they burnt the building, and the reason that they decided to burn ours was that the black Union soldiers had been stationed in the courthouse when the Union troops were here. And Owensboro was a Confederate or a Southern sympathizing town, and but this Captain Davison was the leader of this guerrilla band from Hancock County, and he just hated black people and decided that his group would come down and burn our courthouse. So there has been quite a write-up in the Owensboro Monitor, which was the newspaper at that time. Now, they did rebuild. The fourth courthouse was built in 1868, and it served the county for 96 years until the present courthouse was completed in 1964. And if you'll notice, this courthouse is in a U shape. The old courthouse stood until this one was completely finished, and they moved all of the records into this courthouse, that was built in 64, and then they tore the fourth courthouse down.
Okay. What could you tell us about anything historically related to the city of Owensboro as well as the county of Davies?
Okay, we were created in 1815 from Ohio County, which came from Hardin County, which came from Nelson and then Jefferson, and all of this area was part of course, Kentucky County, Virginia. The first settler in this area was Bill Smothers that came in 1797. And he was a hunter and Indian fighter that settled on a ravine on the Ohio River. And presently the Executive Inn is located in this area. And of course the ravine was filled in many years ago, and other buildings are there, but the Executive Inn covers that part of that area. Mr. Smothers didn't like civilization very well. He only stayed around long enough for the population to grow a bit, and then he traveled on to Texas. But we were created in 1815 from Ohio County. We are named after Joseph Hamilton Davis, who was a colonel and was killed at the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1812. Colonel Davis and his brother John owned much of this area, so that is one reason that the county is named for them. The city of Owensboro was laid off in 1816, and at that time was called, when they petitioned to become a town, they petitioned it as Rossboro, named after David Ross, who was an early property owner. And for 35 days, this area was called Rossboro, and the legislature denied the use of that name and renamed it Owensboro after Colonel Abraham Owen, who was also killed at the Battle of Tippecanoe during the War of 1812. And this is the first naming of any town or county after Colonel Owen. Owen County in Owenton is also named after him. Of course, we have a United States Senator, Wendell Ford, who grew up here in Owensboro, and he was also governor of Kentucky. He and his wife were both from Davis County. David Boswell, who is Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of Kentucky, is a resident of Davis County. We have had famous actors such as Tom Ewell and an actress by the name of Cynthia Bostic that's in plays and soap operas and TV productions now. We've had several from the sports area. Cliff Hagan is from Owensboro, or from Davis County. Of course, Rex Chapman is from Davis County. And Darrell and Mike Waltrip in the sports car for anyone in field. And then for many years, we had a hydroplane or regatta race, and Bill Sterrett was very well known on the regatta circuits. Owensboro is known around the world for our barbecue, and we're known as, in many places, as the barbecue capital of the world. We will be holding the 9th annual barbecue festival soon. I think it's in May this year. And then we also, this will be the 3rd year that we've hosted the International Bluegrass Association Festival, and they have incorporated the Owensboro Symphony with bluegrass. They've played together, and many name groups, bluegrass fans from all over the United States, have come to these programs. We also are the home of another type of champion. We've had the Kentucky Wesleyan College is located here, and they're currently in the NCAA races for basketball. And we also have two other colleges, Brescia College, and then we recently, in the past couple of years, have a new community college, the Owensboro Community College. So we're well represented through higher education here.
Okay. Which will be easy to do. A warm welcome to our Senator Wendell Ford. Thank you very much, Carol, Bishop, Father Riney, distinguished platform guests, ladies and gentlemen. It would fall my lot to follow Happy Chandler. He can remember more at 89 than most people can at 39.
Brownsville, the county seat of Edmonson County. Edmonson County population, 11,329. Area square miles, 302. Rank, 64. Edmonson County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
Ready? We're in Brownsville, Kentucky. This is located in Edmonson County, and behind us we have the county seat. To my left we have Mr. Dale Huffman, who is a local resident. He's also a high school history teacher, as well as a local historian and a member of the Historical Society. Mr. Huffman, which high school do you teach at?
Oh, I teach at the Edmonson County High School.
Okay, and what grades do you teach?
I teach grade 9 to 12, and I teach courses in world civilization at the present time.
Okay. What can you tell us about the formation of the county?
Well, according to the records, our county was formed in 1825 out of parts of Hart, Warren, Grayson counties. This courthouse that is behind us was constructed sometime in the 1870s. This courthouse replaced a log courthouse. And an interesting fact about this courthouse, the brick was made here on the spot. And as I said, sometime after the Civil War and around, I would say around the mid-1870s. Of course, our county is closely associated with the history of Mammoth Cave National Park, and we've had many important people pass through our county. Many have stopped at Mammoth Cave. In 1851, Virginia Lynn visited us, and according to tradition, she sang a song on April the 5th, 1851. She sang The Last Rose of Summer over at Mammoth Cave. And things like that is part of our history. And because of the fact that we have two navigable rivers in our county, the Green River and the Nolan River, there were many early people passed through our county. They used these two rivers for transportation, and we have because of this, we have a very, very colorful local history here. And our Historical Society since 1978, we've been collecting our local history, and sometime in the immediate future, we hope to publish a history of our county, which would be a major undertaking. Mammoth Cave, according to tradition, was discovered in 1799 by a hunter named John Houchins, and in the early 1800s, Mammoth Cave was opened to the public and became one of the major tourist attractions in this part of the country. And through the years, Mammoth Cave has had many important visitors, and there's been many important visitors come to our county. According to tradition, Andrew Jackson, when he was inaugurated president in 1829, he came through our county by stagecoach and on his way to Washington, and he would stop at Cleveland Springs Hotel, which was a health resort, and
he liked to stop here because they had horses, and he would ride some of these trails out in the Cleavage Springs area of our county. And we've had many foreign dignitaries. I believe one of the emperors of Brazil visited us one time, and one of the important men in Russia visited us one time in the past, and a couple of years ago we had the visit of President Reagan when he came to Mammoth Cave, and went through the cave one day. We just recently formed a Chamber of Commerce, and they're working very hard to bring industry into our county. But in the past, we used to have a very important rock asphalt industry here, and this asphalt was quarried out of the ground and taken up to a early mining community called Rock on the Northern River, and they take this asphalt rock and crush it into this paving material, and it would be shipped all over the United States. This company closed about 1950, and since then we've not had any major industry in this county.
I'm Donald Houchin, and I'm the county judge here in Evanston County, and have been judge for a year and 2 months.
My name is Jerry Pruney. I'm sheriff of Evanston County.
Alicia Webb, and I'm clerk and assistant to the sheriff, and I communicate for the sheriff here in Evanston County.
The county seat of Grayson County. Grayson County population, 21,508. Area square miles, 493. Rank, 12th. Grayson County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
We're in Litchfield, Kentucky, which is located in Grayson County. Behind us, we have the Grayson County Courthouse. To my left, we have a gentleman whose name is Burl Sinclair. He is a historian here in Litchfield. He's the former president of the Historical Society, and we would like to ask him a few questions about the county and the courthouse itself. What can you tell us about this courthouse and the ones that existed before the courthouse here?
This is the third courthouse that we have had. The original was burned in the Civil War, and the second one was a brick building built close by here, not in the center, and it burned in 1896, and we lost all the county records at that time. And so this one then was built, another was built then in the square, and it burned in 1936, late Depression years. So this one that you see now is the fourth one, and now of course we have the Hall of Justice, a new one down on another block. So we've been reckless with matches, I guess.
What can you tell us about the formation of the county?
The county was formed in 1810. This wasn't one of the earliest counties, of course, but then they went mostly on horseback, and from Hartford in Ohio County to Elizabethtown in Hardin County, it was too far to go in one day by horseback. So they needed another county, and they set this one up, Grayson County, in 1810, and named it after one of the aides of George Washington, Colonel William Grayson. And we originally, when it was set up, included land all the way to the Green River near Brownsville. But later, Edmonson County was set up, and they took a chunk off of Grayson, you see, to make part of Edmonson. So then we've held what we have now.
Okay. We were talking earlier about some of the earlier presidents that had been through the area. Can you tell us about that?
Well, we've had some connections to three of our presidents of the United States. We can't claim this as birthplace of any of the three, but George Washington in the late 1780s swapped his horse Magnolia for 5,000 acres of Kentucky land. He had heard the report that there was iron ore in the area, and there is, but it's not of a high enough percentage to be commercially usable. And so he swapped the horse and got 5,000 acres of Kentucky land. This has been adequately authenticated by competent attorneys and so on, and is accepted by the Washington people, the committee and such over at Mount Vernon as being true. They knew he owned land here but didn't know where, but it's been authenticated as being in the northwestern part of Grayson County on the Little Rough River. So then Lincoln came here to visit, but long before he was president. He had an uncle who lived within sight of where we are now. That is, of course, an old house, and it's been long gone. But Mordecai Lincoln, that was the president's uncle, lived here for quite some time. And Abe came from Illinois, no doubt on horseback, and visited his uncle while he was here in the 1840s. And one of the farms, one of the farms I have owned near the Rough River State Park was settled by a Simeon Buchanan, who was related to the President James Buchanan, the only bachelor president we've ever had. So we've had some connections, and we've had one of the judges of our first Supreme Court of Kentucky settled here after his career in Frankfort was over. And so we can dig up a little bit of history and connections to important people.
How about some of those, we'll just call them characters from the past?
Well, we've had all sorts of characters. Grayson Countyans have always been pretty great in telling stories and yarns and such, but we had an outlaw family that I guess the word for it would be to say they holed up in Grayson County just prior to 1850. They'd been on the run over a murder in another state and settled in the Pine Knob community, which is about 10 or 12 miles west of here. And there was a book written about their activities, and the book relates that sometimes they would offer a stranger overnight lodging, but he would disappear. They'd take what he had, including the horse, and murder him, and that'd be the last ever known of him. So we've had all sorts of activities here. We had a great, a widely known health spa in the late 1800s, Grayson Springs. It had a series of quite a number of mineral springs and hot springs, some of them, and so great numbers of people, especially from the south, came here to bathe in the mineral waters and to drink them and, well, to rest. Hotel facilities, I think they say about 1,500 rooms at one time. But of course, like most of the health spas of that type, it's been long gone.
Okay. For those who aren't familiar with Grayson County and the area, something else we're trying to do is promote tourism for each county or the counties that are close to something that they can stop through and not just see the courthouse, but perhaps have a nice long weekend. What can you tell us about tourism in the area?
We think we're pretty well situated to be attractive to tourists. We have the Rough River State Park that I mentioned earlier on the northwest side of the county, on a lake that where the Army engineers had built the Rough River Dam in the late 1950s up to 1960. So great numbers of people come there. So we have that lake of 5,000 acres on the north side of Grayson County, and then on the south and southeast we have the Nolan Lake, which is very attractive to great numbers of people, and they come to that in great numbers. We're going to have a little additional interest this year. An outdoor drama is going to be put on at Pine Knob, which incidentally is about the Doc Brown story that I mentioned, the Outlaws. Mm-hmm. And this will be the first year for it, but that'll be going beginning in June, I think, on Saturday nights, and we'll run through the summer. So we think we have a number of interesting things for people to see and do while they're here. We do have a number of small industries here, and we're fortunate. Some of our county leaders several years ago were aware of the fact that we needed more employment here, and they worked to bring in industries. We have several small plants here, and this is a great help. But we have a lot of people who have had to seek employment outside the county. Many of them over the years have gone into Louisville, Fort Knox, and to various points for employment. And as you know, a lot of those jobs now have kind of slacked off, and we're needing what we really need is perhaps a larger plant of some sort to give even greater numbers of employment. Our agriculture here is, well, I guess to be kind, is in the doldrums as it is everywhere else. And our people are, they're good workers, and it should be attractive to industry to come in, or even service industries to establish here and let our people work. The tourist trade helps a lot, but we need more employment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hallsville, the county seat of Hancock County. Hancock County population, 8,061. Area square miles, 189. Rank, 110th. Hancock County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
Hancock County was formed in 1829. It was formed from portions of Breckinridge, Davis, and Ojai counties. The larger portion of it came out of Breckinridge County. As you may know, in the olden days, they wanted a county seat within a 1 day's ride. Everybody in the county must be within 1 day's horseback ride of the county seat. And that's the reason for all the division of the smaller counties. In 1832 to 34 and even up to about 1850, Hallsville was a coal mining area. The city of Hallsville sits on the hills here, and it is all these hills are undermined with coal mines. There was the Reverdy, the American Cannel Coal. Out in the county there was the Breckinridge Cannel Coal. There's the Falcon mines, the Hawes mines, and many of the smaller mines. Hallsville was named for the man who gave the land for the county seat. His name was Richard Hawes. He lived in Davis County, but he owned this land where the town is sitting. And he gave this land to, in a document that went to the state in 1827, he stated that he would give 75 acres of land from the mouth of Lead Creek upwards and to form a square for the sole purpose of a county seat should a new county be formed. This was 2 years before the county was formed. At that time, the groundwork was laid for the new county, and it was, from then on, it became known as Hallsville in this area. It was built in 1867. It's the one that is behind me. It was finished in 1870. It is the second courthouse to be built here. On the first floor, we have the circuit court. The second floor is the courtroom. And the third floor is the Hancock County Archives that was formed in 1982. In this room, we have all of the old documents and the county books from 1829. We are the first county archives to be established in the state of Kentucky. The courthouse, in many of the old drawings, it showed the hitching post and things in this area where the parking lot is now of the new county annex building, and it was built in 1977-78, and it is on the exact location of Hancock County's first courthouse. It was built in 1830 to 32, and it was torn down in 1868 when the new courthouse was to where that they could move into it. The county jail was by the side of the new annex building. It was a stone building built in 1865 to 67 area, and it has been torn down to make way for a parking lot. Hancock County was named for the patriot John Hancock. Picture was made during World War I with the troops. It was a troop train, I believe, and many of the people there had gathered to wish them well and wave to them and things.
The lovely lady that's been giving us the history of Hancock County and Hallsville is Clarabelle Phillips, and Clarabelle has one of the most impressive archives collections in the state of Kentucky. As she said, it was the first county archives, and I know she's proud of what she's done here in Hancock County, and the citizens of this area should be extremely proud of you also, Clarabelle, and the stories that are written in the newspaper and the work with the fiscal court and the other elected officials here to maintain the old courthouse and to keep history alive here in Kentucky, particularly in Hancock County.
This is something that Hancock County is definitely proud of, is our heritage. We have a time capsule that is to be opened in year 2029, and everyone in the county 2 years ago participated in putting things in this time capsule. I myself put a little envelope in for my little 5-year-old grandson, and with pictures and stories. Businesses put their histories of their business and things in there. It's to be open in 2029 on the 200th anniversary of our county, and I would just love to be here to see what the county is like at that time.
You know, we've enjoyed our visit here. Of course, we spent the night here last night. I talked with you yesterday evening and enjoyed the beautiful view from the Riverview Hotel and restaurant up on top of the hill, the view of the beautiful Ohio River and the valleys here, and our evening and our day and our time spent here in this area has been most wonderful experience and very educational, I might add. We enjoy having been here with you, Clarabelle.
Well, thank you. There's one other thing. I'd like to thank you for taking an interest in all 120 counties to film this. At your own expense. It's been tremendous, I know, but God bless you for it.
Thank you very much. Several Kentucky artists were commissioned to draw these paintings. This is of the old courthouse. Of course, here we have Hancock County, which is a good place to live. Some of the tools of the trade. And of course, a Kentucky crop, tobacco, and the old telephone switchboard. Here we have the old aluminum factory, and of course the Squire Pate House, an old sorghum mill, a high school theme, of course the Lewisport City Hall, and the Hancock County river scenes with the old steamboats. Immaculate Conception Church, Case's Grocery Store, the Old Presbyterian Church, Midway One-Room School, Old Hancock County Jail, the Beauchamp House, the old courthouse and the annex, and the old Emmerich House, downtown Lewisport. Of course, the old Hilltop Service Station, Tom's Ice Cream Shop, the old steam boiler, Vastwood Park, Old Lewisport United Methodist Church, printing press. Of course, one of the fundamental rights that we have from the First Amendment is freedom of the press. The old grandstand at the fairgrounds and the John Cannon Memorial. Of course, the Lewisport School and the depot at Hallsville. And after leaving Hancock County, we traveled upriver to Breckinridge County, stopping at a small town called Cloverport, an early shipping point. And as you can see today, the travel on the river, the Ohio River, which borders many miles of Kentucky, still is a very vital part of our economic growth and development as a commonwealth. Elizabethtown, the county seat of Hardin County. Hardin County population, 92,307. Area square miles, 629. Rank, number 4th. Hardin County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
To my right, we have a gentleman by the name of Eugene Robinson?
Gene Robinson.
Okay. And he has been kind enough to spend a few minutes with us to give us some information on the county and the county seat. One of the questions we were asking is, when was the county formed?
The county was formed about 1798. And the city cemetery over here was established about that same year. It's been in continuous operation, and it's owned by the city of Elizabethtown. And of course, you know the history of the Civil War, what happened during the Civil War here when General Morgan came through and captured the town in about a half a day's time, you know, back in 1882. So, but from that time on down through the years, and our first mayor was Mr. Buck Park here in town, and he became mayor in about 1871. And we've had continuous city administration since that time. In fact, I served 10 years myself, back from 1960 to 1971. So this courthouse back of us here burned in November of the old courthouse in 1932. November of 1932, and this courthouse was built and completed in 1934. Well, the major industries, we have a number of factories here now, and we didn't really start growing to any extent until about 1960. And from that time on, we have had numerous factories come to town. And of course, Hardin County, you know, has a population now of about 80-some-odd thousand. The city has a population of about 18 to 20,000. And it's been continuous growth. Of course, Fort Knox makes so much difference here, you know. So,
for those that may not know, how far away is Fort Knox from your town?
15 miles. Okay. 15 miles. Well, of course, we all think here that Hardin County is a top county because, you know, it's a bustling place anymore. So we're real proud of the county. Now, General Morgan came up from Bowling Green and came on up the L&N Railroad and stationed himself down at Nolin, a little town on Nolin River down here between here and Sonora. And so, of course, there was a company of about 700 Union men defending the town here. So he moved his troops on up from Nolin up to outside of Elizabethtown in a woods beyond the city cemetery and stationed himself there. And by the next morning, he had trenches and gun emplacements all in place. And so he started firing into the town in 1882, and within 6 hours the town had surrendered and the Union men started waving white flags. So General Morgan course, in firing into the town, that cannonball struck there, and there were several other places that he struck buildings around here, but some of those buildings have been torn down. But this is the only permanent one that's still left. So, and then he was entertained royally by a lot of the women in town. He was fed gingerbread and cookies and everything imaginable. And he left town that night and moved on toward Colesburg and destroyed the railroad bridge between here and Colesburg. And that was the extent of the Civil War.
In the early county history, the first settlers in Hardin County were Captain Thomas Helm, Colonel Andrew Hines, and Samuel Haycraft, who came in the fall of 1780 and built 3 forts, with blockhouses about 1 mile from each other, where Elizabethtown now stands. Those who composed the colony, which came in 1780, were the families of the above men, and those of Jacob Vantimeter, Colonel Nicholas Miller, Judge John Vertris, Miles Hart, Thomas Brown, Shaw, Dye, Freeman, Swank, and others followed. Among the earliest settlers was Christopher Bush, of German descent, who reared a large family. A daughter, Sally, married Thomas Lincoln, and thus became a stepmother to the President Abraham Lincoln. The Second Baptist Church, organized in the District of Kentucky, was established at Hines Station, June the 17th, 1781, with 18 members. It was constituted by Reverend William Taylor and Reverend Joseph Barnett. Reverend John Gerard was installed as first pastor, which was of short duration, for in March 1782 he was captured by the Indians and never heard of afterwards. The first teacher, Ichabod Radley, at Hardin Settlement, remembered among his pupils such men as Ben Hardin, Robert and Charles Wycliffe, Samuel Haycraft, and others. The first brick house was begun in 1801 for Benjamin Helm. The next brick building was erected in 1806 to courthouse. The site you see now, of course, is where the Civil War battle took place and where a cannon actually hit the building, as you can still see the indentation.
Built this huge mansion out here and of course spent his life here. And then he had a son who was killed at the Battle of Chickamauga down in the Civil War at Chattanooga. But he's probably the most prominent man in the town or county. And of course we had the president of this bank here who served on the Highway Commission back during the Fields administration, and was quite a prominent man. His name was Mr. W.C. Montgomery, but he died in 1935. But other than Governor Helm and Mr. Montgomery and of course D. Hullison,
Mumfordville, the county seat of Hart County. Hart County population 14,866. Area square miles 412. Rank 30. Hart County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
We have Judge Vince Lang. And
the courthouse was built in 1928. We had a courthouse fire on January the 3rd, 1928 that destroyed the original courthouse, and this was built in 1928. Farming is the main industry of the county. We have some manufacturing in the county. We have a bedding company that's located in Mumfordville.
With us today, we have Mr. Charles Williams, an attorney here in the Hart County area, giving us some history on the formation of Hart County and its county seat. Charles, let me ask you first, how did the county of Hart County receive its name?
It received its name from Colonel Nathaniel Hart. He was a bluegrass soldier, and I think he was also an attorney. And he was killed in the War of 1812. And he had many friends in the Kentucky legislature. And in the 1818 session of the legislature, they created a county in his memory.
And the town of Mumfordville, which is the county seat, how did it receive its name?
It received its name from the brothers Richard and Thomas Munford. And they came here from Amelia County, Virginia in about 1801. And they settled this farm, which is now Munfordville, of about 2,500 acres, which they received as a part of a land grant from a woman whose husband had originally owned it, a Frenchman, whose husband had originally owned the land grant. And he had received 2,500 acres on the Green River, which is just in this direction. You can see the bridge down there. And the Munford brothers obtained this from her after she was widowed, and they came here and settled.
In the formation of the county itself, what counties did Hart County split off from?
Hart County split off from Hardin County to the north and Barron County to the south.
And I suppose that we look in the background here, of course, behind us is the current courthouse.
That's right.
Do you know when it was built?
The current courthouse was started in 1928. It's the third courthouse which has stood on this square. The first courthouse was torn down sometime in the 1880s or 1890s, I forget which. And the second courthouse, which was a brick structure, which stood exactly where this one stands, burned down the 3rd day of January 1928. And in that we lost almost all our early records of the formation of the county, but except for one deed book.
What about some historical figures that either have come from Hart County or have traveled through here? Can you tell us a little bit about some of them, or colorful figures?
Well, of course, Hart County, like all counties in Kentucky, is full of colorful figures, both past and present, and I'm sure that the present generation is spinning its own group of colorful characters. It seems like all of these little counties have a lot of very interesting people who do interesting things, and I say that with reference to Todd County and Greene County and Clark County and other counties I've known a little bit about. But the historical figures of significance in Hart County, of course, are the Munford brothers. And then in the Civil War, we had native sons who knew each other, who served as generals on separate sides of the war. One was then later General Simon Bolivar Buckner, and General George T. Wood. And both of these men were friends when they were growing up. And General Wood served with the Union Army, and General Buckner served with the Confederate Army. General Buckner later went on to become the governor of Kentucky. In fact, he was running for governor of Kentucky 100 years ago this fall.
I guess that if someone was traveling through Hart County, let's first ask what historical buildings or structures other than the courthouse would someone want to see?
Well, the structures in Munfordville relate primarily to the Civil War, and we have about 10 structures still standing today which were standing then. We have the nurses' quarters, which was our village school, built about 1835. The Presbyterian Church, which was built about 1829, was the hospital during the Civil War. The place where John Hunton Morgan came and conscripted his first 100 volunteers into the Morgan's Raiders is right over one street over. It's called the old McCandless House. Mr. Morgan couldn't find enough Rough Riders in the bluegrass to supply his needs. He needed people who were sort of rough and who were also pro-slavery. So he went up and down the farms along the Green River and recruited his men, and they were a little rougher cut of man than some of the bluegrass gentlemen that Mr. Morgan had been dealing with. And he lived over at the McCandless House for the month of October 1861, and he was sworn into the Confederacy in Hart County on the steps of the Woodsonville Church. He later went from here to form Morgan's Raiders. And today, after the consolidation of our schools in Hart County, our basketball team and football team is known as the Hart County Raiders. So he was, in answer to a previous question of yours, a famous person who came through. Andrew Jackson came through here and stopped at our old inn down here, and it was built about 1801 by Thomas Munford. It was a tavern and an inn, and he opened it in 1801 and kept it open for the rest of his life. Jenny Lind is reputed to have stayed there, but I think Jenny Lind stayed at every place in Kentucky. from legend. She traveled very slowly through the country.
Another question would be, other than historical sites that one could see, if a traveler was traveling through Hart County or this region, what would one see for recreational or vacation atmosphere?
Well, of course, when Hart County was formed, it was a part of the what is now Edmonson County. Part of Edmonson County came off from us, and that part happens to be the location of Mammoth Cave. So we have a portion of Mammoth Cave Park still within the boundaries of Hart County. We have Mammoth Onyx Cave, which is a commercial cave right off the Horse Cave interchange. We have the Hidden River Cave and Horse Cave, which is not open to the public now, but is still, I think, the 10th largest cave system in the world. We have Nolin Lake on our northwestern boundary, which separates Hart and Grayson counties. And we have the Green River, which goes right through the middle of the county and divides it from north to south. And we have a lot of very fine recreational facilities here because of those three attractions.
I would imagine there's probably some pretty good fishing down this territory then.
Yes, sir. Right now is the season when people begin to come in and start their muskie fishing. And we have also a number of creeks where people fish for rainbow trout. This stream, the Green River, because it's cave fed, is very cold. And because of the coldness of the water, certain fish occur here in the Green River which actually have their natural habitat very far to the north of us, like the walleye pike and northern pike and some of those species that really are northern fish, but they've made it here because our water is so cold. All right, this building was built about 100 years ago by someone named Chapline. That name is no longer a part of Hart County names, C-H-A-P-L-I-N-E. It was built with a store in the first floor and with two apartments in the upstairs. This building, until very recently, was actually used as a store building. About 10 years ago, the Hart County Historical Society received some money from an estate, and they purchased this building for their historical museum, and it is a very interesting little museum. It's open 5 days a week, and we have a lot of tourists come through here. The most significant development in Hart County in the past 2 years has been the decision in the summer of 1987 of the American Cave Conservation Association to locate its national headquarters in Horse Cave. This house was built about 1835 by the Wood family. Mr. Wood was the first county court clerk for both Hart and Barron counties and served in that capacity for about 60 years. In this house, Simon Bolivar Buckner boarded when he was going to school in Munfordville. He later became a general for the Confederacy, and Mr. Wood's son, George T. Wood, became a general for the Union Army. This old home was built about 1835 by Dr. Lewis Barrett. Dr. Barrett is and was the original doctor for the village of Munfordville, and he lived here all of his life. This home is now occupied by Robert and Doris Clore, who restored it about 10 years ago. This church behind me was built about 1829 to serve as a church for the village of Munfordville. It was built for the use of Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, and Masonic orders. And in the Civil War, this church served as a hospital for the forces who had to stay here. After the 1862 battle, which took place in September 1862, General Grant ordered that Munfordville be occupied. And that occupation lasted until well after the Civil War. As a part of the occupying force, it was necessary to have nurses and carpenters and cooks, and there was a very large tent city on Mr. Munford's farm of Union troops who occupied Munfordville until well after the war. The reason Munfordville was occupied is because just to the west of the city there is a railroad bridge, which was vital to the rail link between Louisville and Nashville, and it was the main line for providing supplies to the western front of the Union Army, of which Grant was the commander. The house directly behind me was built in 1823 of log by Thomas J. Munford. As we have said earlier, he was the brother of Richard Munford and Munfordville's original tavern keeper. Thomas Munford's log structure is now under the clapboard structure, which was renovated last year by a local realtor. The structure on the corner was built as the original school in Munfordville in about 1833. It is directly across the street from the Munfordville's original church. This structure served in the Civil War as a nurse's quarters, and until the first decade of the 20th century, it served as the only school for the village of Munfordville. After it served as a school, it was later a doctor's office. And after it was a doctor's office, it became an apartment building, and then it passed into being a private home. In about 1965, it became a lawyer's office. And my father and I practiced there until he died, and now this is the place where I practice law in Hart County. The house directly behind me was built in 1837 by F.A.S. Smith. He was a meat packer and had a large meat packing concern at the depot. Hart County is served by, as I said, the main line of the L&N Railroad. In about 1861, John Hunt Morgan boarded here while he got up his first 100 volunteers into Morgan's Raiders. This home later passed into the possession of the McCandless family, and Judge McCandless was later, after being Hart Circuit Judge, the Chief Judge of the Kentucky Court of Appeals. This house was renovated about 3 years ago by a local realtor. I think that you will find a close-knit community in a beautiful part of the state. These hills on each side of the Green River are really a lovely place to be, and it's just a good lifestyle and a good kind of people to work with. I, of course, have lived here all my life, and I don't know what it's like in New York or Hong Kong, but I can tell you that the main thing that Hart County has going for it is its people. And we try hard, and I was asked to say that we also are looking for a good basketball team this year for the Hart County Raiders.
Right. Hodgenville, the county seat of LaRue County. LaRue County population, 12,434. Area square miles, 263. Rank, 78th. LaRue County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
My name is Iris LaRue, and I'm with the Chamber of Commerce here in LaRue County.
And I'm Tommy Turner, LaRue County Judge Executive.
Okay, thank you. We'd like to get some information on the formation of the county.
Well, back in 1818, Robert Hodgen, who was the town father, got permission to incorporate and founded Hodgenville, based around his home place, which was about 20 acres. He had a small inn there where many travelers stayed, including Louis Philippe, who became later one of the French kings, and also the Hodgens operated a grist mill there, where people took their wheat to have it ground into flour, and it became a very flourishing little spot here in the county. All right. Lincoln was born in LaRue County, what was at that time Hardin County, on February 12, 1809, just about 3 miles south from where we stand right now. He was born in a one-room log cabin, and it's rather interesting that the daughter, Rebecca, she was the daughter of Robert Hodgen, is said to have assisted at Lincoln's birth. Lincoln and his sister Sarah and mother and father lived at the Sinking Spring Farm for about 2 years, and that farm is now known the world over as Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historic Site. It is owned and operated by the National Park Service.
Our present courthouse was built in the mid-1960s. Prior to that time, the courthouse was located on the town square in the middle of Hodgenville. That courthouse was torn down in the mid-1960s after this building was built. The old courthouse was built in the mid-1800s, and it was burned during the Civil War, and was also burned again in the mid-1950s, something like that. It was after it was demolished, of course, it was located down on the square across from the Lincoln statue. And so this has served as our courthouse from that time until now.
What kind of information is available as far as tourism?
We're very fortunate to have the national park that I mentioned earlier in our county. We have about 300,000 or so people each year who visit Lincoln's birthplace, and of course we'd like to see a lot more people than that come and visit us. The park is a very beautiful place. We also have a lot of other attractions here. When the Lincolns moved from the Sinking Spring Farm, they only moved about 8 miles away to Knob Creek, which is just east of here, and it's really in a beautiful setting. It was there that Lincoln first saw the slaves being driven along the toll road, and may have made the impression upon him that helped to make him the man that he was. It's also the place where he has written that caused his earliest memories. So we're, real proud of the fact that Lincoln was born here. He's probably one of the most famous men in the entire world. We are trying to make the most of what we have, and also to bring about some other attractions for our county. We have some buildings that are on the historical register, and as the judge just mentioned, the courthouse, this particular courthouse houses probably the only Lincoln art collection of its type, and we're very pleased with that. It hangs here in the lobby. Each year we add a new piece of Lincoln art to that, so you may want to take a look at that.
Okay, thank you. What is the major industry in LaRue County?
The major industry we have here is Nationwide Uniform Corporation, located just outside of Hodgenville, and it employs approximately 400 people.
Population is 12,000. The city of Hodgenville is about 2,500. Then we have 3 smaller communities within the county. Magnolia and Buffalo are each about 500 people. And then down in the southern end of the county, Line Station has about 400 people.
Lebanon is the county seat of Marion County. Marion County population, 17,825. Area square miles, 347. Rank, 48th. Marion County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
We're in Lebanon, Kentucky. Behind us, across the street, we have the Marion County Courthouse. To my right, we have the county court clerk, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
I'm Philip Jarbo. I've been county clerk this is my 14th year.
Okay. What can you tell us about the county, how the county was formed?
Well, Marion County, when Kentucky was originally formed, it was 3 counties. At one time, we were part of Jefferson County. The 3 counties were formed in 1780. And up till 1834, we were part of Washington County. In 1834, Marion County fell away from Washington County was formed. So in 1863, all the records in the courthouse were burned. So consequently, from 1834 to 1863, there's no records of anything on Marion County. And the original courthouse was torn down, and the courthouse that you see across the street was dedicated in 1935.
Okay. Could you tell me what the population is in your county?
The population of Marion County is just something over 18,000 people. and about 5,600 is the population of the city limits of Lebanon.
Frank Abel, a barber.
What is the name of your shop?
Frank's Barber Shop.
Okay. Where's it located?
West Main Street.
I'm Leroy Sen. I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Office.
Okay. What can you tell us about the major industries in your county?
Well, there's several things I guess we'd like for the public to know. And, number one, we have the Jane and Linda Sportswear plant here. It's owned by a Palm Beach company. The Evan Picone skirt for ladies is made here. It's a very famous skirt, sold all over the world, and primarily by Saks Fifth Avenue and some other stores, expensive skirt. Then we have Maker's Mark Distillery here, and I think most people are familiar with Maker's Mark. In addition to that, we have an industry here who has already signed a contract to supply the new Toyota plant. We have a new company that built their plant last year during 1986 that will employ about 100 people. They're in production now, running 3 shifts and have about 40 people on the payroll. So we're doing very well here. The economy of Lebanon has picked up considerably. Most of the merchants down here are just tickled to death with what's going on.
Okay. What about tourism in your county?
Well, tourism we really haven't gotten into big yet because we spent most of our time and effort in trying to help the industries that are here, and we've been successful in that. And I might add, by the way, that we have a whiskey barrel manufacturing plant here that's exporting a large number of barrels to the Far East and to Europe now. So tourism hasn't really been a real high priority on our list. It will be as things continue to develop, and as the Highway Department builds US 68, as was promised by Governor Collins, then we will be able to get into tourism more. Right now, our greatest need to help us with tourism is the highway system.
Marion County was established by an act of the legislature approved January the 25th, 1834. It was cut out of the southern part of Washington County and was named in honor of General Francis Marion of Revolutionary War fame. Lebanon, the county seat, was incorporated in 1815 and first commenced by Ben Spalding. He named it for the surrounding growth of the cedars of Lebanon. The first court was held on the first Monday in March of that year in the east room of what was then called the Jennings House. The old courthouse withstood the ravages of time and served the community for 100 years. Brandenburg, the county seat of Meade County. Meade County's population is 23,172. Area square miles, 307. Rank, 61. Meade County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
This is Sue Carter Harrington. To my right, Miss Sue Carter Harrington.
This is Mr. Monk Ross, our county judge. Meade County was formed by parts of Breckinridge County and Hardin County.
Harrington, how did Brandenburg get its name as Brandenburg?
The first settlers in Brandenburg were named Brandenburg, and there's graveyards around that still, have Brandenburg people buried in them.
Well, right here in Brandenburg, aren't there some Brandenburgs? Well, I know there are some Brandenburgs buried over on the hill by the historical house, Jimmy Watts's. Is that true?
Yes, and also by the Methodist Church. There's a cemetery where there are Brandenburgs buried. Well, John Hunt Morgan came through Brandenburg, and he was supposed to have visited in the Buckner home, which is now the J.R. Watts residence. And while he was here and they were going across the river, they sunk the Alice Dean, which I'm assuming was a ferry boat at the time. The first courthouse was on the site of Mrs. Jean Markham's home now. Of course, the courthouse is not there, but the clerk's office is part of her house.
You want to elaborate a little bit on the second courthouse?
Well, of course, all I remember about it that my grandfather was county judge there for 2 terms from 1890. And, of course, the courthouse was destroyed by the tornado in 1974.
The courthouse right behind us was built in 1975 and 76, replacing the courthouse downtown that was blown away by the tornado.
Well, about, I'd say 4 o'clock, they told us that there was a storm and we should all go to the basement. And we had to go outside to go downstairs. And I didn't really think much about it because tornadoes were something they had someplace else. But as I looked over my shoulder, a farmhouse, a dairy farm behind me, the house just went up splinters. And then I began to think that maybe it was for real. And it blew the top floor off of the RECC building. And none of us were hurt in there except me, and a piece of wood hit me in the head, which was only a scratch considering what everybody else got. There was Miss Ona Craycroft that worked there. Her mother was killed in the tornado, and Jane O'Brien lost both parents down in the area that Judge Ross was talking about that was all blown away.
Would you like to tell us about the Doe Run Hotel and some of the churches in the area, the history on them?
Well, I can tell you about the Brandenburg United Methodist Church. It was built in 1855, and during the Civil War they housed some troops. And then they, after the war was over, they sent a bill. They did quite a bit of damage, so they sent a bill to Congress for $125. And we have long since gotten an organ in our church that came from Westfield, Massachusetts, I believe, and it was built in the 1880s.
Tell us about the Doe Run Hotel and how it was formed, and because you live so close to it.
Well, the Doe Run Hotel was an old mill, and I believe it was a mill until the 1900s. And then in the early 1900s, they made a summer resort out of it because they had mineral waters there, such as sulfur water, and they called it Sulphur Wells. Then in about 1927 or so, they changed the name to Doe Run Inn, which is now as a hotel and a restaurant.
Would you like to tell us about the St. Teresa's Church, one of the oldest churches in the county that's still being used?
Yes, St. Teresa's Church was built prior to 1828 and is the oldest church in the area. Anyway, it's also on the National Registry, and the church building was built in 1856.
One of the largest parks in the state. It's called Otter Creek Park. It's owned and operated by the city of Louisville, and some 25 to 30, sometimes as many as 50,000 children a year come to camp at Otter Creek Park. They've just built a new restaurant overlooking the Ohio River, and they have 4,000 acres that they acquired in the early 40s, and it has really turned out to be a big asset to Meade County.
I'd love that. I think that would be fun. Where all these cats come from?
I don't know. I hope they're feeding them.
I took a cruise on the Ohio River.
You mean on the Mississippi?
Yeah, on the Mississippi. Well, we go on the Ohio River sometime. Because I got on them in Chicago.
Oh, you did? And I happen to be a cat person, so I'm trying not to feel anything if I do it.
My grandfather was county judge, and in the convention, the Constitutional Convention of 1890 and 91, he was one of the signers of the present Constitution. And included in this album up here is the writer of the Constitution, who was W.R. Ramsey, and Bennett H. Young's picture, who was the composer of the Constitution. Right below that is the pen that he signed the Constitution with on September the 28th, 1891. Then below that is the autographs of the Kentucky Constitutional Convention of 1890-91, and that includes the governor, Simon Bolivar Buckner, and also the pages of the convention. And right above that is a petition. They wanted to change the county seat from Brandenburg to Little York, which was the first settlement in Meade County. And this petition was one that they got to keep from changing it, and of course they didn't. Here are 3 railroad passes that my grandfather used during the convention to ride on the 3 railroads. And this is the Constitution. The one that was written by hand was lost. They don't have it, but this copy is is one of the first printed copies. And also the rules of the Constitutional Convention is the next book. settlers of this area that would like to have land that is situated in the state of Kentucky and the county of Breckenridge and Hardin County, which made up Meade County. And there was 75,654 acres for sale.
This is a one-room schoolhouse called the Bunker Hill School, located approximately 3 miles west of Paynesville in a little community called Dead Horse Holler. And this school was discontinued in 1954.
Bardstown, the county seat of Nelson County. Nelson County population, 29,348. Area square miles, 424. Rank, 27th. Nelson County is located in the 2nd Congressional District.
To my right, we have the local historian, Dixie Hibbs, who has been graciously volunteered to answer a few questions for us. Dixie, what can you tell us about the formation of the county?
All right, Nelson County was formed out of Jefferson in 1784. Actually began the 1st of 1785. It was named after Thomas Nelson, governor of Virginia. Of course, we were still Virginia at that time. We would not be Kentucky till 1792, but after 92, we would have over 16 counties to be formed out of the original Nelson. Nelson was everything south of the Salt River of Jefferson County. Jefferson was one of the 3 formed in 1780. We are settled mostly with people from Northern Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland. Most of them came down the river on flatboat. They are, a lot of them have been here ever since. We don't move around too much. We let the world come to visit us instead of us moving on.
Okay. What can you tell us about this courthouse? It's a gorgeous structure.
Well, this courthouse was the result of a contest that was run in 1891. The county commissioners decided they wanted to build a new courthouse. So they ran an ad in the Courier-Journal. Architects submitted plans, and they chose this one. This was built by Mr. Lyons, a contractor out of Louisville. He was directed to tear the old courthouse down, which was stone, and went back to 1800, and to use all the stone in the courthouse in building this one. Well, you don't see much stone on this courthouse. It's all underground. So you go down in the basement, you can see some of the original 1800 stones. It cost about $29,000. And I think it's real interesting. In 1982, we built a brick sidewalk around it that cost $28,000. Courthouse now only houses the district court, the circuit clerk, the county judge, the sheriff's department. Our county clerk and some of the other county offices are in a courthouse annex because we outgrew that site. As big as it looked in 1892, it certainly wasn't big enough in 1982.